Welcome, everyone. This is the Tuesday, August 15 meeting of the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. Welcome, and we're going to start with roll call.
Chair Eileen Delaney here. Vice Chair Marianne Pintar. Bonnie Kink here. Dr. Lee Brown.
Here.
Andrew Hayes.
Here.
Nadia Kinayu.
Here.
Ariana Federico Mondragon. Pastor Robert Spriggs. Tim Ware. G.I. Wilson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to Ellen Gross. She is our new counsel, and welcome, Ellen. Is there anything you'd like to say before we get started?
Yes, thank you, Chair Delaney. My name is Ellen Gross, and I'm very honored to be here to be your new general counsel. My history is very brief as follows. I've been an attorney practicing here in San Diego for over 30 years. My most recent position was the Assistant General Counsel for the San Diego Unified Port District, where I engaged in civil litigation, personnel and employment, and was the legal advisor to the Harbor Police Department for over 20 years. Prior to that, I was the legal advisor for the Chula Vista Police Department for approximately 3 years. Prior to that, I was in private practice where I worked as a plaintiff's attorney doing civil rights litigation on behalf of plaintiffs. And my very first job was in the very first graduating class of the Public Defender's Office under the County of San Diego. So I have worn many hats, and I'm very interested in all of the work that you all are doing, and I look forward to contributing in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Welcome. All right, with that, we'll go to public comments. This is the opportunity of members of the public to address the board on any subject matter within our jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. And I'd like to remind you, please keep it, again, within our jurisdiction.
Chair Delaney, we have 3 requests to speak in person, and at least we have 5 requests to speak in person.
Okay.
6 requests to speak in person, and then 1 to be read into the record. First, we'll start with David Settles.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, hello, I'm David Settles. I'm the brother of Matthew Settles, who passed away in George Bailey exactly 1 year ago tomorrow. So once again, this is his anniversary. At the special meeting, I'm not going to repeat it, but I just want to repeat, I just got, it's very emotional for me. It's 1 year. I just got done taking a trip up to the Sierras with my 3 kids. My daughter had to come in from out of town to scatter Matthew's ashes. And, he loved the Sierras. Matthew, had been diagnosed with schizophrenia back in college. He had a number of hard years, but he living in boarding homes, every year we took many trips with my kids. So we have a lot of memories, and, it's just hard. I wish, obviously he was still here and that we could continue to share those memories. I mean, taking a trip without him, we missed him. We just have a lot of memories, but that's why I'm here to voice my support for what you're doing as far as helping to really improve the jail system. I mean, it should not be a death sentence. And that's what we feared when Matthew started having some problems and additional crisis. And he went back to the mental county hospital, which is where he was in the last kind of couple of years before he died. And, it's just a shame he ended up in jail. He should not have been there, but, for him to have been in the jail the last 2 months, he was taken out of the county mental hospital where he was getting treated and into downtown. Now, when he was removed back to jail, why he was removed from the psychiatric unit, still don't know have any answers. And that's what I'm looking for, supporting the transparency, accountability of what happened to Matthew. That's what we want to know. He was assaulted. We still don't know when or why he was transferred George Bailey, further away from us. He was when he passed away in solitary confinement. How long he had been there. We reached out trying to contact him and we couldn't. So it's just trying to prevent this for others, so everything I support the bills for transparency, whether it's, wearing body cameras, that just any information that the families can get of what he went through. And, it's a shame. So thank you for all you do. And that's why I'm here to voice that support for Matthew. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Tammy Wilson. Who am I going to? I have Paloma. There's Paloma, and there we go. Paloma Serna.
Hello. Thank you once again, board members, for letting me speak tonight. So once again, I am the mother of Elisa Serna, who died in November 11th, 2019. I come again down from Montana to also to continue to fight for justice for her. We need transparency. We were hoping that maybe, Kelly Martinez would be a change after Gore, and it doesn't seem like that. We need transparency. I mean, it's just, withholding documents from us, changing the policy regarding those reports that we need, the internal report, but also too, it's also about the statute of limitation. During the preliminary hearing, I found out that deputies could no longer, as they were becoming witness during the preliminary hearing, that they could not ever be charged now over my daughter's death because of a statute of limitation that needs to be changed. Everyone should be held accountable. If it was I would have already been prosecuted within the first year and I would be in prison at this moment if I had neglected my daughter that way. But also too, still, the drug use, that's the drugs that are getting into the jail still. We need to find out who's, how the drugs are coming into the jail. I mean, the sheriff department is stating that they're doing everything that they can. They're, the inmates are being scanned, the mails are being checked. Okay, so how are the drugs still getting in? And also too, about body cameras, is all jails, my question is, does all the jail have these body worn cameras, and are they being is it working, to keep the inmates safe, and also the deputies? And to, we just need justice. We really need, help. I really do hope that the board will stand, before us. I know you've done so much for us already, but we're still asking, we're pleading for help. We need change. We need, we have 11 deaths, this year, and God forbid there will be more. We have to put a stop to this. And I thank you for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Michael Serna.
Good evening. My name is Michael Serna. I am the father of Elisa Serna, who died November 11th in 2019. It's the first time I've been able to be here. And I know a lot of times when I do get on through the phone or, the Zoom, I was telling my wife and daughter today, I don't like to speak because a lot of times I feel like I just come and I rant and I rave, or I get on and I rant and I rave. And I don't want you guys to think that we are unappreciative of of all of your time and your help and everything you've done, all the members here. We know that we've seen change in these last few years that we've been getting online and just looking into the CLERB. We do see change and we do appreciate all your efforts. We appreciate all you guys are doing. And you know, you guys even sit here and you take the blunt of our pain and, you know, you hear all of our aggression sometimes might bleed out. And, you know, it's because we're hurting, because this has been going on for years. And that's why we keep coming and we keep getting up and we keep, sometimes it might even seem like it's beating a dead horse, but we still see deaths in the county jails. Yes, I was telling my wife, it seems like they're not as, they're deaths that are happening because of natural causes, things like that, but there is still ODs. There's still people dying in the county jail because they don't want to implement things that they know they ought to, but they don't want to give an inch. And that's why we're here. We're appreciative for you all, because you guys do hold their feet to the fire. You guys do ask questions. You do enter after the fact, and you do your investigations, and we appreciate that. But things are still happening. People need to be held accountable. Like my wife said, we all hoped that there would be change with Kelly Martinez. In just the last trip, we came down here like maybe a month or so ago for the preliminary hearings in the criminal case. We've seen how the county is holding press conferences in buildings that are inaccessible to the public, even though they advertise them as public accessible meetings. They're still doing things that are behind the scenes. They're, you know, they would love to drag us through the mud. They fight us tooth and nail for years. Like my wife said, we would have already been in prison. We would have already been sentenced and sent down the road. We would have been held accountable a long time ago. But it seems like because they work for the county, that it's all, everybody's all involved in, you know, basically the county's paying everybody's check. Things are being drug out. Things that they're dragging their heels. Just recently, we've seen an officer be held accountable for sexually harassing many women. And what did it say? The county just
Thank you,
kicks
Mr.
this
Sutton.
down the road time and
Thank you,
time
Mr.
again.
Sutton. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all your effort.
Next, we'll go to Tammy Wilson.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wilson, the wife of Omar Marino Arroyo, who died January 6th of 2021. He was the first inmate to die on 2021. I'm here because I want to thank you all and thank you for letting me speak. But I'm here to still ask that for transparency and policies to be done, to be followed, because there was policies that weren't followed with Omar, and as a result, he died. And it was really unexpected. He was there less than 12 hours. So I just, I hurt really bad. And it's not getting any easier, and I'm just want justice for him. So we need to end qualified immunity is my belief. They have too many laws that protect them. And if I was to do something, I would definitely be prosecuted right away. So, I mean, why they get away with so much, I don't understand. Why they don't have to follow their own rules and protocols that they have in place. It's not fair. It's not fair for the loved ones left behind. Anyways, thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Sunday Weddle.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cindy Weddle. I'm the mother of Saxon Rodriguez. I'm also a member of the North County Equity and Justice Coalition. I would like to start off this evening by telling all of you thank you. Everyone at CLERB, thank you very much for all your hard work. I know that Kelly Martinez and her clan of negligent staff is keeping you super busy with the excessive number of recent in-custody death investigations. Every time I see another jail death on the news, the wound in my heart from Saxon's death reopens and I relive the grief from losing my young son all over again. Many of you know already, Saxon died 2 years ago in Central Jail of a fentanyl overdose. Despite now having Narcan readily available to the inmates, and I thank CLERB because I feel you guys were instrumental in making that happen, there are still too many drug overdoses and deaths happening, too many Narcan deploys, over 100 this year, which means drugs like fentanyl, one of the most poisonous, deadly drugs, is still pouring into the jails. Kelly Martinez herself said that fentanyl is not detectable on the X-ray body scanners. This is a huge red flag and a grave problem. I mean, this is life or death. And so I'm asking CLERB to please continue to put scanning and searching of all staff, deputies, and any visitors to the jails back on the agenda. I believe it is time to utilize the drug sniffing canines already on staff to search all who enter and work in the jails, not just the inmates, but everyone. I made a promise to my son Saxon 2 years ago as I stood over his casket sobbing at the side of my dead child. And no mom should ever have to bury their child. I made him a promise I would find out how and why he died. And I thank CLERB for helping me with that. I also made him a promise that I would find out who was responsible for his death. Sabrina will probably read those names here shortly. And I also promised that I would continue to show up and try and make changes to this broken system alongside of you guys. So I really appreciate everything that you guys do. And we are very passionate about this. And I know sometimes our passion can sound like anger or, you know, that we're mad at you, but that's not it. We know that the sheriffs, we know that Kelly Martinez and her clan are probably listening. So a lot of it is directed at them. But thank you for the opportunity to speak. Rest in peace, Saxon Rodriguez, and recall Kelly Martinez. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we do any further, IT, could you please move that owl? I cannot see the speakers at all, and I'd really like to be able to see them. Thank you.
So next we'll go to Sabrina Weddle.
Hello, you guys met the soft to my hard. I'm Sabrina Weddle. I am the older sister of Saxon Rodriguez. It's very nice to meet you, Ellen. I believe I'm saying that right. Saxon Rodriguez died July 20th. There's like an echo now. July 20th, 2021. Yesterday marked 2 days since we closed the casket on his body. And the last time I was here speaking, I brought up the fact that somebody now shares the same anniversary as my brother, except my brother was number 7 in 2021, and we're now on number 11. There's been some kind of change in the last 2 years since my brother has died, but not enough if we're on number 11. And that person shares the same date as Saxon. The deputies that were responsible for my brother, Brian Powell, Andrew Randovich, Maxwell Rimple, and Andre Ranzer, will never be held accountable. They've told my family for the last 2 years to get over the fact that my brother has overdosed. That's really bugging me. The nurses, Melissa Burns, on one of the last meetings that we were on, she said the best place for somebody to overdose would be jail. I don't think that statement should have even came across a nurse that works at the jail, a statement to be said. If the best place if somebody overdosed would be jail. No, it shouldn't be the best place when drugs should not come into the jail. And like my mom stated, the inmates go through $1,000 scanner that obviously isn't doing a good enough job if as of August 4th, there already been 100 deploys of Narcan, over 100. Fentanyl is still getting into the building. And I also stated the last time I was here, I've done protest after protest at San Diego County Jail. And each time I've been there, there's been an ambulance there picking up an inmate. Clearly there's an issue going on and it's happening way too often. The fact that I share an anniversary, my brother shares an anniversary that somebody else that also overdosed 2 years later, they died, not at the jail or whatever, but in sheriff's custody. Change needs to happen. These deputies need to be held accountable. The nurses haven't got on a CLERB meeting until the CERN has held them accountable. Nurse Melissa Burns, Reggie Barreto, Carrie Cavello, Ria Encarnacia, Caitlin Hendricks, Marlene Abanzip, Kelly Payne, Levy Santos, Chantel Williams. These nurses are so mad that I have their names, and that's fine. I have a dead brother. These nurses also need to be held accountable. We had a nurse come on the CLERB meeting and state that the best place for someone to overdose is jail. My brother's dead, so obviously it's not. And if they would have checked him on time at 60 minutes and not 65, because the medical examiner said that 5 minutes cost him his life, he'd be alive. But nobody's going to be held accountable for them not doing their job properly.
Thank you. We have 4 requests to speak online and 1 request to be read into the record. We will start with Dr. Darwin Fishman.
Hello, good evening. Darwin Fishman, he, him, his, Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego. I just want to echo and support what the impacted families, family members have been sharing with you guys. I also want to add to this, and I know I've shared this, but I think it's really important because I was on the CRB, City of San Diego, and I did have similar experiences with families, impacted family members coming to us and sharing really horrific stories and feeling at times like a deer in headlights. What can we do? Because we're not the police department that were responsible for the complaints, what was initially produced. We're not the district attorney that's supposed to investigate it. We're not the city council that makes policy and can do things like fire and hire police chief. It's different on the county level. I understand that, sheriff being independent. But there is a lot that you guys can do, and there's a lot that's not discussed. And I worry about how much you disclose to the public about that. The truth is, you're not just an investigative body. You're also, with the boards and commissions in County San Diego, you're in very good standing. You have access to things like the sheriffs. You have access to things like the supervisors. Paul Parker has personally talked to you about even things like going to Sacramento and being a part of the legislation. San Diego should be front and center on this issue. You should be the ones that are screaming at the top of your lungs. We have a serious problem in San Diego, not sweeping under the rugs, but offer your testimony in Sacramento. Tell the legislators what's going on in San Diego. Say we need help. What is the policy that the state can do to help us? We're in an ugly, deadly rut. We're producing families that have dead members on a regular basis. We don't know how to get out of this. Our elected officials are failing us. The sheriff is failing us. Tell the sheriff that you're having these families coming to you. Have the sheriff Martinez meet with the families. You can ask for that. You have access to the sheriff. Go to the supervisor. Say you're having these family members come to your meetings. Tell the supervisors to meet with them. Tell them to develop policies, not just excuses about how they're separated from the sheriff's department. There's a lot that can be done. And it's not a part about playing sides. It's about, at the end of the day, we know that the 11 in custody deaths is going to we're on par for a new record. We know that it's way too high. And we know that there's positive roles that people can play, agencies and entities, to help in this crisis. I hope that you guys, if not publicly, at least discuss this privately. You've got a lot of openings. You've got things like Senate Bill 519 from Atkins' office. You can play a role in this with the testimony and support for the work that's being done that can really change things. So I just want to echo and support what's being taken to the families. And I also want to encourage you guys to take positive actions, to continue to push, even if you get rejected for the sheriff.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Yusuf Miller.
Good evening. My name is Yusef Miller. I'm with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition, the Saving Lives in Custody campaign. And what powerful testimonies from all the family members that are coming here, pouring out their hearts that they do week after month after month. And even in special meetings, they're showing up and been showing up religiously since 2020, 2019. And this is the dedication of these families, because these families have turned themselves from victims to advocates. They're activists, and they're going to be here, and they're going to rally, and they're going to march. So what we need, if you want to calm these things down, is change. Change that comes out of these families' hearts and out of their mouths is in SB 519. The change that's coming out of their hearts and out of their mouths is coming out of AB 268. We need real support of these bills. And these bills will not only make it easier for families to see what happened to their loved ones, it should also make your jobs easier as well. The transparency is a key part. These families have not known what happened to their loved ones when they've died over a year ahead, 2 years out. They don't know what happened to their loved ones. These CIR reports have been promised to be transparent by Kelly Martinez when she was running. And then when she got elected, as all you know, she pulled back on that. Now, here comes a judge that allows us to push the CIRs. But what happens? The county and the sheriff's department push back and do a legislative move to delay these tactics. We need to be, as in CLERB, with the support of the families, with the support of the communities, we need to be up in this situation and make sure that we're pushing back against all these manipulations on these bills and all these acts that'll make it more easy for these families to find out what happened to their loved ones. And don't stop pushing back. I know with this drugs increasing in jails and these people are overdosing in jails, and you are asking for transparency. You're asking for scanning of the deputies and staff as they go in. And when you hear no, keep going. And when you hear we're thinking about it, what a statement. We're thinking about it. We're considering. Say no, we need action. People are dying. As of last year, around this time, we had 5 deaths in the month of July. I'm so glad we're not having that kind of surge at this point, but we're still regrettable that we're on the 11th death of the year. And this person also was in a mental health crisis. The person is in a mental health crisis. Jail is not a place for mental health. Jail is not a place for addictive services, and jail is not a place for homelessness. So if we can take the handcuffs out of these things, a measures that change the way we are policed in the community, we would have less population,
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next, we'll go to Leslie Crawford. Leslie Crawford.
Can you hear me? Thank you. I'm here to back up with North County Equity and Justice, Yusef Miller just said. I want to thank the board for continuing Paul Parker because he has knowledge of what has been going on. But it's obvious that you have no teeth. So the bills that are up in the legislature now are extremely important to us. My son died a month or 2 months after David Settle's brother. But there's something that all these people have in common. I can't get out and protest with them as much as I'd like. My health is giving me a problem. But there's something they all have in common, including my son. None of them were sentenced. They went into the San Diego Sheriff's Department facility, and they are not trained to handle mental health and addiction combo problems. And that's what we're dealing with, probably a third of the population. So we definitely need people who are trained to take care of this situation, because the Sheriff's Department is pretty much a clan. And I don't see them being retrained, and I don't know if they could be retrained. It takes maybe some trained professionals coming in their place. It just can't keep going on. And like I say, I wouldn't be speaking now, but I believe for these individuals whose loved ones were never sentenced, but were taken into a facility where they died. I really thought my son would be safer in jail than on the streets. but that was so wrong. And I know you can't do anything about it. So you need to be politically active. If you don't have the teeth to change what the sheriff's department is doing, because they won't change on their own, then you need to be more proactive and vocal, as has been said just prior to this. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your work, and thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Jennifer Schmidt, Gilbert Gill's daughter.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we definitely need to get people who are more trained because their policy says that they are trained to see the difference between drug intoxication and mental illness. And they definitely aren't. My dad had dementia and they illegally arrested him and they're not trained. And he died for absolutely no reason. Before he was ever even sentenced to see a judge, he was there for 15 hours and he died on a book and release. There needs to be change, there needs to be reform, and the 519 needs to go through. That's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go to Dr. Tom Packard. Dr. Packard.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah. My name's Tom Packard. I'm a member of Showing Up for Racial Justice, North County. Prior to my career at SDSU, I was an organizational change consultant, and I'm speaking now from that perspective in the interest in getting the sheriff's department to more assertively and proactively initiate systems change in areas including excessive jail deaths and inadequate treatment of incarcerated persons with behavioral health and other disabilities. One key principle in organizational change is that the need for change can't be over communicated. Therefore, I'm repeating the request I made at your June meeting to ask that you ask Sheriff Martinez herself to attend a CLERB meeting. I appreciate that Chair Delaney reported in January that she's invited her to attend CLERB meetings, but as far as I know, there hasn't been any action on this. Others and I have been speaking to you for over 2 years about such needed changes with little to see in terms of systems change made by the sheriff. I do appreciate that many of your recommendations have been approved, and I hope the sheriff will soon accept others that you've made. Another key principle in organizational change is that change leaders need to demonstrate a sense of urgency regarding a needed change. So far, from what I've heard and read, the sheriff's statements simply mention some minor changes in jail operations. If some mysterious mechanical problem had led to the death of 19 deputy sheriffs in a year, I expect the sheriff would have expressed a lot greater sense of urgency and commitment to change than she has shown regarding jail deaths. Furthermore, if she truly values your work, I'm surprised that she has not herself initiated a meeting with you as key stakeholders regarding the safety of incarcerated persons. Please invite her and give her in advance a set of questions that only she can fully answer. I offered some questions in June, and others in the community can provide more if you're all interested. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Finally, we have a request to be read into the record from Deidre McLeod. My name is Deidre McLeod, and I'm a constituent of Supervisor Joel Anderson, District 2. My pronouns are she, her. Recent updates to CLERB by the Sheriff's Department about detention services and the Family Liaison Program have been very helpful. But I would like to encourage the board to seek out diverse community voices for future formal presentations as well. I'm reminded how informative the San Diegans for Justice presentation was and would like to see more of that. In particular, I'm thinking there's an opportunity to invite members of the county's grand jury to speak about their 2023 report regarding irregularities with the Incarcerated Persons Welfare Fund. By reaching out to local organizations, you might even be able to arrange to have a formerly incarcerated person speak about personal experience within the fund's program. Given tonight, you will be addressing new business about seating time and time limits on public speaking, actively providing more opportunities for long-form input from community leaders and organizations would be welcome. A board representing the people of San Diego County should more regularly hear in depth directly from the people of San Diego County. We have 2 additional requests to speak. We will go to Robin Sales.
Hi, thank you for taking my last minute statement. I'm a mental health professional and been attending CLERB meetings for, well, it seems over 2 years now. And I'm a representative of Showing Up for Racial Justice. I'm also on the Behavioral Health Advisory Board from the county, but I'm speaking for myself. I want to support the families who come out at every single meeting to advocate for their lost family members and for all people who are incarcerated. It is very unfortunate that the jails all over the country and prisons have become the primary source of mental health care and substance abuse care in this country, and especially in this county. The counties have a shortage, jails have a shortage of mental health professionals as there are in the community, because people cannot afford to live in San Diego County. So we have an exodus of people who could provide care. I do believe the Sheriff's Department is trying to staff up with mental health clinicians, but have been unable to do so. And I would really encourage them to increase wages and do anything they can to maintain who they have and to increase applicants. I'd also like to say that this problem doesn't start in the jails, it starts in the communities. And we need more mental health care, more treatment, mental health and substance abuse treatment that reaches people in all communities in San Diego so that incarceration can be prevented. I don't think personally that the jails should be providing mental health care. And I do believe that it should be happening so that families can be supported in the community. So I would encourage CLERB to advocate for more mental health services in the communities and to advocate for improved and increased mental health services in the jails. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Emmanuel Diaz Hayes. Emmanuel Diaz Hayes, are you there? Chair Delaney, we're seeming to be having a technical issue with that request and with that person who's requested to speak. So if you want to carry on, maybe we can try back.
Okay,
later.
we can check back, see if we can get them. Thank you. Now go to the minutes approval for attachment A1, which is August 2nd. If we can take, if there aren't any revisions, we could take them all 3 at once. Council, is that okay, or do we have to do them individually?
Chair, that's fine. You can take them all at once.
Thank you. A1, A2, A3, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, Andrew. Okay, Dr. Brown, any other discussion? Secretary, could we call the roll, please?
Chair Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Bonnie Kank, yes. Dr. Brown, Andrew Hayes,
Yes.
Nadia Keen Ayub. Ariana Federico Mondragon
Yes.
and Tim Ware. I'm sorry, G.I. Wilson. I get you two confused.
All right, thank you. We have no presentations this evening, so we'll go directly to the, sorry, we had motion pass, excuse me. We'll go now directly to the executive officer's report. Mr. Parker?
Thank you, Chair Delaney. This month, there have been a couple of meetings that have occurred that I want to make sure everyone is aware of what we're doing internally. Supervising Special Investigator Lynn Setzler and I met with the Deputy Sheriff's Association personnel, just as a meet and greet for their new president and secretary. We'll be discussing some additional statutory issues and whatnot, and I'll provide additional updates as we move forward with those discussions. But I just want to make sure everyone knows that they were willing to meet with us and we were willing to meet with them to move forward. So that's number one. Number two, Ms. Setzler, Special Investigator Lenore Aldridge, our admin analyst Nora Sakak, and myself met with Sheriff's Department command personnel and discussed the detention facility inspections. We'll talk more about that under new business. Ms. Setzler, Special Investigator Spencer Clue, Ms. Sakak, and myself met with the Probation Department, management and their policy personnel. We'll brief that under new business as well. The Independent Death Data Report Project, just to make sure everyone's aware in the public, the Sheriff's Department, but also this board. If you recall, about a year and a half ago, thereabouts, we had a report presented to us from an independent company that we commissioned to look at death data in San Diego County jails compared to other jails in California, county jails. This board wanted us to attempt to acquire funding and to secure a vendor to look at 15 areas of follow-up identified in that report. And we are in the final process of doing that. We look forward to making that announcement at our September meeting and then moving forward with that. Our rules and regulations, now that I don't know what the answer is tonight, if the polls are closed or whatnot, but I know we have been waiting for the Board of Supervisors to be fully staffed before we move forward with our rules and regulations revision that this board has given us authority to move forward with for the presentation of our annual report and our semi-annual reports. Once that member is filled, however long that takes, then we will move forward in presenting those things to a full Board of Supervisors. We have to do that in the next couple of months, but I want to let you know that obviously none of those things they're on the back burner for the obvious reasons, but they're still primary important projects that we're doing. As far as the investigative workload and classification report for July, you have attachment B in front of you. I think the thing to note, obviously there were 14 new cases. We have 97 open cases at the end of July. And you might think, looking back on all these workload reports from the last couple of years, we always seem to be at like 100 open cases. What's going on? You have more staff, you have more funding. Why? And we contend the why is this board is getting more thorough reports than they've ever had before, number one. And number two, the word is getting out about CLERB. We're closing, like for example, last month, I think we closed 18 cases. That's almost unheard of to close that many cases in a meeting, but then we had 14, right? So we're always, it just seems like no matter what. So don't look at the numbers that would tend to indicate that they're, that CLERB is not doing its job. I know that we're producing a heck of a lot more thorough quality work than we've done before. So please keep that in mind. 40 open death cases. A lot of people here in the audience would say, why do you have that many open death cases? To the Sheriff's Department credit, we cannot really move forward until we get all the materials for our death cases. The Sheriff's Department has provided materials for 10 open and active death investigations. We're still waiting for materials on the other 30. A lot of that, quite frankly, has to do with the medical examiner's office. I hate to say it, but it is what it is. We are still waiting for medical examiner investigative reports, autopsy reports, because we don't know causes and manners of death for folks who have died within the, for many folks who have died in custody within the last year. So we're waiting for that. And we're hopeful that we believe with the medical examiner staffing changes that have occurred, that we're going to see some progress. So we're hoping that we can report out on that real soon. Unfortunately, there were 3 new San Diego Sheriff Department in custody deaths reported to us in July. At the end of the month, we had 9 open uses of force resulting in great bodily injury, all from the Sheriff's Department. 1 is on tonight's agenda. We have the materials for all but 1. There are 7 open discharges of firearms, and these are the categories that were given to us after George Floyd's murder, that we don't need a signed complaint. We have 7 open discharges of firearm. We only have materials for 1. We're still waiting for materials on many of the others. As far as attachment C, the reports by due date, by case number, you can see where we are. You can see the exact status of every case, when it's due, the 1-year timeline is due. As far as the correspondence that I sent to all CLERB, last month, a lot of it has to do with SB 519. A lot of it had to do with SB 519, and there was maybe an additional media release article and whatnot. Policy recommendations pending response. The Sheriff's Department has 7 to basically to address as I'm permitted to address briefly some things that were said in public comment. Out of those 7 recommended pending responses, one of them has to do with what we already sent back to the Sheriff's Department about the searching and scanning of all persons entering detention facilities. We are awaiting that response. We believe that the response of the Sheriff's Department has been received by the grand jury for their very similar recommendation. We believe that that has occurred. We'll report out on that more next month with hopes that we'll have an answer to that one by next month. We're also, as referenced maybe a little bit by SB 519, we're still waiting for the response from the Sheriff's Department for the Critical Incident Review Board, the publicly releasing the reviews conducted by that board. We made 4 policy recommendations for that, and we are awaiting those as well. And we hope, and I know, I mean, I've talked to some of the folks in the back row back there, and we know that they're coming. We know they're working on and they're coming. That we know. Probation Department has 4 outstanding policy recommendations. Quite unfortunately, some of them have been, at least one of them have been over a year. One of them is about prohibition of law enforcement gangs, which is a law that needs to be, it says that every peace officer employing agency has to have a prohibition against law enforcement gang participation. So we're waiting for that policy recommendation response to come. And this month we received 1 policy recommendation response from the Sheriff's Department about employee social media. We made this recommendation to both the Sheriff's Department and the Probation Department. The Probation Department got their response back to us a couple of months ago. The Sheriff's Department response was favorable in part because it said that they will add, it basically said the resources are not there with 2,500 folks to look through or whatever, but that they're going to add social media as one of the categories that they will be reviewing, that they will be looking at. And you can read the full response, the full favorable, in part, response that they provided. Otherwise, I have no additional items for the executive officer's report. I do have a question for clarification from members of the public. Do I have to request to speak on that topic? Somebody mentioned, I had a request to speak for social media for 2 folks. Is that true or not? Disregard. Back to you, Chair Delaney.
Thank you very much. You've been very busy. Appreciate everything that you're doing. Okay, board chairs report. I only have one comment I'd like to make and let the public know. Every year we go to what's called NACOL. It's a law enforcement. It's National Association of Citizens Oversight for Law Enforcement. This year it's in Chicago, and it's all the CLERB-like organizations throughout the country that come together, and there's training and this and that. And everyone on the board has an opportunity to attend. At our May meeting, we reached out and I made a comment that anybody that's interested, please contact me or Paul. I believe an email also went out. So I just want to make sure that the board knows that they are always welcome to attend. 2 people may attend along with staff. And if you're not going this year to Chicago, not my favorite place, there's always next year. Just let us know. And if you want to go next year, let us know now and we'll get you on the list there. There you go. If it's in Hawaii, sign me up. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of let everyone know, and we let the public know also that we're in contact with other organizations that do what we do as well, and we can learn from them as well. And with that, we will go to new business, and I'll turn it back over to Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Chair Delaney. The next 2 items are basically updates. So 7A is an update reference the CLERB detention facility inspection process and guidelines. A couple of years ago, well, I'm going to give a brief history just because we have people here who may not be aware of that. We have members of the board who may not be aware of that. The background was this: 32 years ago, when CLERB was created, we were given the authority to conduct inspections of the adult detention facilities. For 25 of those years, that was never really talked about. We didn't have the funding to basically even do our cases, let alone to do other things that were allowed, that we were allowed to do. The Disability Rights of California group in 2017 and 2018 made some recommendations. They were looking at the Sheriff's Department's practices and policies in reference to suicides in custody. And they made some recommendations. And one of the recommendations was basically to create a civilian oversight entity that's responsible for conducting detention facility inspections. So Sheriff Gore at the time, I reached out to Sheriff Gore and the undersheriff at the time and said, well, you have that. That's what we are. So that's when the ball was placed in motion. Unfortunately, we didn't have still the funding or whatnot to do that. until CLERB was moved, appropriately so, 2.5 years ago to the Finance and General Government Group. Now that we're at the Finance and General Government Group and not the Public Safety Group, we've been provided a lot of support, funding that we never thought we would have. We're nowhere near where we need to be if you look at national standards, but we are definitely more than what we've ever had. So I can say that the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, she made it happen for us and provided a position for us to do detention facility inspections. That position was presented or granted to us July 1st. So we are going to do that. Now, we have selected Lenore Aldridge, one of our investigators who has been a detention facility. She's been a detention officer back 15, 16 years ago, a medical examiner investigator since that time, and a CLERB investigator over the last 4 or 5 years. She's going to be our detention facility inspector. We need to get her trained. We need to make that happen. We met with the Sheriff's Department last Monday, 17, 18 folks with the Sheriff's Department. It was an extremely collegial, professional meeting. The reason we met with them was because none of those folks, to my knowledge, that we met with had any role in creating these detention facility guidelines that we started in 2018 that were then put on hold through COVID and then brought back and approved by this board in August of 2021. Well, there's been a change, right? Almost everybody has changed. It was a very professional, a very good meeting. I came away from the meeting. I felt really good about the direction, about the sincerity, about the dedication that those folks at the Sheriff's Department were telling me and our folks. I felt it. If I didn't, I would say it. But I felt good. It's a start. This is a learning process for us. We've never done this. So we presented the detention facility inspection handbook. They've looked at it as well. We have looked at it as staff. We present it to you tonight with just a couple of minor changes that have been made because of the times, for the most part. Nothing really substantive, other than we're obviously not going to be taking phones or cell phones or anything like that in there for the security issues. Nobody does, is my understanding. Nobody that goes in that does detention facility inspections, not the state, not the grand jury, not nobody. So we're not being treated any differently than anybody else that does inspections. We are going to, we've updated that to say no photos, but we also, what I had envisioned doing was kind of stretching these inspections out, having Lenore stretch these inspections out over a year. But the Sheriff's Department has a lot of inspections. They're being looked at in a lot of different ways now. And so we're going to do it in the first quarter of the calendar year. You know, and all with the same policies, all the same procedures that all the facilities have, maybe some tweaks here and there. Let's see how this works. So we're going to have 4 months basically to get Lenore up and trained, to establish some groups with the Sheriff's Department, to get us all on the same page as we move forward and start these detention facility inspections in January. And we will plan to report out on our findings. It'll be Lenore who does the speaking on this from January on. I would imagine when she's finished and we put something together, the Sheriff's Department, of course, just like with every other audit or inspection, they have the opportunity to look and give their response to our draft work to make sure that we're not missing anything or we're not misinterpreting anything. But Lenore's going to be the person that's going to be doing this and coming before this board and this public to say where we are. I will then, when we present the annual report to the Board of Supervisors, wrap that up with Lenore and present it all at the same time later in that calendar year, because the inspections will be done by that point. I think that's pretty much where we are. I just want to make sure you folks were okay with with these recommended changes. And again, to be clear, just to get them on the record, we talked about the phones. We talked about how the supervising special investigator will be present at the first detention facility inspection, can be present with Lenore at subsequent ones, or even myself can be present if I choose to be. But this is going to be Special Investigator Aldridge's project, and you're going to be there when you feel you need to be as we move forward working together. So that's in there. The only other change, and without trying to hide anything from this board, we had a subcommittee when this all started. Actually, we had a subcommittee. I think when I went away. I don't believe we had too much of a subcommittee when I was here the first time when I drafted these initial ones. I don't think we did. So then we had a subcommittee, but in consultation with the chair, I've asked to take that subcommittee out from the review process. The only reason, number one, the subcommittee, we have to reestablish it, but that's fine. But number two, it simply adds time. It simply adds time. And I contend that with any time passed, it's an opportunity for us to save a life as opposed to go through different layers when we're just going to present the product to the full board anyway. That's it. Okay. So that's where we are. If anybody has any questions or concerns about moving forward, I'm available.
Members of the public, do you have any comments? Board members? I'd like to say that Mr. Wilson and Ms. Kank and I were on the committee. I did review it with council and with Mr. Parker. And I think this is something that needs to be handled quickly. Sorry. I have a talking problem this evening. And I think this is a good solution. Expeditiously is the word I was trying to pronounce. Mr. Wilson? Yeah. Yes, Mr. Brown, or Dr. Brown.
And that is what we're doing right now. Ms. Aldridge has already located some trainings put on by training facilities in the state. Now, we don't think, and the department, I mean, we've already talked to the department. We don't think it's appropriate to have the department train us on how to do inspections. That wouldn't pass a smell test or anything. But it is appropriate for the department to give us background about the facilities, give us just like they do for the grand jury, to do all those type of things. But for us to get the training outside of the department for inspection purposes. And that's exactly, we already have one training lined up at the end of the month. I believe there's another one lined up for September. But we will work with the department, not for them to teach us how to inspect, but to get that background and things that they want us to know moving forward. Does that answer the question, Doctor?
Mr. Parker, when you go to NACO, are there other CLERB type organizations that do detention facility inspections?
There are, but they're not off the top of my head. I mean, Ms. Kank would know better than me. There are, but nothing like, not as much.
Okay.
Mostly they're like OIGs or something along those lines.
Okay, so this will be training for us as well. I mean, we're going to try it, we're going to see, and as we go forward. Sorry, Lenore, that owl keeps blocking me. We'll be changing things possibly and working with the sheriff's department to get the best possible outcome for both of us. Are there any other? Mr. Wilson? It's in our.
You know, the interesting thing is I went to their web and I talk to the coordinator often, but I went to their website. It doesn't look like they've done, out of the last 2 fiscal years, it didn't look like 2 or 3. It didn't look like they did any inspections. But we are going to, I believe, be able to join the initial training that the grand jury is provided about inspections as well. And I believe that will be put on by the department. I believe we're going to do that.
And if I remember correctly, didn't we have some of the questions from the grand jury in the folder? Did you get that as well?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
And don't forget, this whole handbook
Yeah.
came from the grand jury.
Yeah.
So it was really tailored on that from the BSCC. But
Yeah.
yes, we have
Okay,
that.
great.
Let's see what we can do.
All right. So do we have a motion to approve those change? Oh, of course. Sure.
Could you clarify the section where it says the goal is to complete inspections at all 7? So it says goal, but we're gonna be requiring the inspections to be completed.
Yes, we are tasked, we are mandated, or we can do annual inspections of all of the detention facilities. So what I'm saying is to have those 7 done between January and April. Is that the paragraph you're looking at?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I did have a question, and I wasn't involved during the time that this was being done at CLERB. Were spaces where they have received any medical care, do those get looked at as well?
We have talked about what we're going to do on page, if I can just point you to the top of page 8. So those issues at the top of page 8 The initial, when we sat down with the sheriff's department a couple of years ago, and just recently when we sat down with the sheriff's department, we are going to be tailoring, for the most part, we're tailoring our investigation, our inspection to the complaints and deaths and uses of force or whatnot that we've had from that respective facility within the last 2 years for the initial one, to include those topics at the top of page 8, which include that. So
Okay.
perhaps an overview of what changes have happened since that time or whatnot. And these are things, quite frankly, it is a work in progress. It is a work in progress. So this board may not, and the department, the public will weigh in over the next, starting in January, and say, look, no, do this or that or this or that. And then we tailor as we go.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that, on board? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the changes? Dr. Brown? Mr. Wilson, second. Okay, any other discussion? Could you please take that?
Chair Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Bonnie King, yes. Dr. Brown, Andrew Hayes,
Yes.
Nadia Keen Ayub, Ariana Federico Mondragon,
Yes.
and GI Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Great, thank you very much.
And we wouldn't anticipate, just to be clear, we wouldn't anticipate bringing this back for additional changes. So after we go to that first cycle, and maybe another year, we'll come back again and kind of do this. We won't do it after every inspection.
Good. I think we're moving forward on this and appreciate all your hard work. All right. You're on again, Mr. Parker.
The next topic we briefly touched on, and I think I mentioned in the executive officer report that last week, several of us met with probation department personnel. One of the division chiefs, I believe it was the chief operating officer, the chief in charge of policy and procedures, and then our liaison, Ross Lewin. We met with them to, again, I'm not about surprising departments. I'm not about keeping information from anybody. So what we talked about were a couple of things. First off, I think I don't know if folks here know this. I didn't, and I'm ashamed to say I didn't until Spencer came on board, and Spencer, with his background as a probation officer, I was unaware that the probation department's detention facilities house adults. So I didn't know that. And we have jurisdiction, as we all know, as we just talked about, to do inspections of the adult detention facilities. But those are juvenile detention facilities. So what we're talking about are a couple different things we'd like to look at. Why, I don't know what was contemplated in 1990 and why we were not given that. I have no idea. But the fact that there are adults now in these facilities, the fact that a lot of folks are being pushed down from the state and being sent back to local detention facilities here in the probation department, and some of the major law changes, this is an opportunity for us, we contend, to look at what's going on, to look at policy and procedures. We have the ability to look at the sheriff department and probation department's policies and procedures. We have not really done that with the probation department. Our focus has been on the sheriff's department. But we also think that we have the opportunity to assist the departments. And this is for everybody in the room and anybody who's known me, board or whatever. We are not here. I contend that we are not here to, I got you doing something wrong. I don't think that's the right thing for civilian oversight, personally. I think that what we should be doing is helping the respective departments provide their best possible service, their care, their compassion, eliminating deaths, reducing drugs in jail, reducing these things. And so for us, we're looking at this opportunity. Look at the policies and procedures about these big program changes. Perhaps float the idea of coming back next month and giving this board and say, why don't we? Our rules and regulation revision has been on hold because of the Board of Supervisors situation. Maybe this board would contemplate adding that to something we can move forward with at this time that we have these things occurring. And I'm not saying anything's going wrong at the probation department, but what I am saying is traditionally, over the last 5 years, most of which I've been the executive officer here, our statistics for probation department cases are anywhere from 3 to 5% of our cases. Okay. This year, as of a week ago, 12% of our cases. Last year, 10%. Again, that's not an inference that something is being done wrong. It could simply be an inference that people now know we exist and that we have the jurisdiction. But again, too, let's look at what's going on if we can. So we met with their department to talk about that. One of the things that this board was opposed to, but again, if we're looking at probation, I'll throw it back to you, Chair Delaney. We've talked about this. And I can tell you right now, to be full disclosure, the probation chief does not support this. The county probably does not support this. At least certain factions of the county do not support this. But to look at the deaths of probationers, this board didn't dismiss that out of hand, but did say, not right now. We have these other things that are important. I simply refer to, just look at some statistics. Just do some research. I've done it. It's a quick search. What percentage of people, is there a percentage increase of people dying on probation nationwide and statewide over the last couple of years? 34% to 40% increase, depending on whose statistics you look at. Nobody knows why. I don't know why. COVID? I don't know. The probation department doesn't know. We've had these conversations. So while we were asking was, hey, what happens when someone on probation dies? What do you do? And I think it's pretty much closed the case file. They're understaffed as well. But why could we not look at the death certificate, get the cause of matter, look at the file? We have access. We're about to put the final signatures on our adult detention facility or on our adult probation or cases that we can get now. Just look to see, are there any systemic issues and trends? Anything. No one can answer that question right now. And I think that we are in a perfect opportunity with everything juvenile related to try to be relevant like we've been with the Sheriff's Department. So that's the update on the department's policies and procedures, our focus on the programs, our focus on trying to get juvenile detention facility inspections and deaths of probation. That's all I have.
Okay. Public, do you have any comments? Okay. Board? Oh, I'm sorry. We do have.
It looks like we have Yusef Miller. Mr. Miller.
Yes, Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition Saving Lives in Custody campaign. I've heard a lot about adult facilities, but if I'm not mistaken, isn't the Sheriff's Department over juvenile detention? And if that's the case, wouldn't CLERB still be have some jurisdiction on complaints and inspections there? I mean, I know a few months ago there was a youth loss of life in custody. So I think that's something, if we don't already have a handle on who is responsible for juvenile detention centers, where there's a crisis, not only here, but everywhere in juvenile detention centers, we need to keep an eye on that as well, if that falls under your purview, which it sounds like it should. Thank you.
Before we go to the next public speaker, that's a great point. We have jurisdiction over the actions of sworn members of the probation department and the sheriff's department. That is how we're able to look at deaths that occur in the probation facilities, the juvenile detention facilities, and the adult detention facilities. We're specifically talking about inspecting those facilities. We do not have the jurisdiction over juvenile detention facilities, but any kind of misconduct or any kind of procedural violation on the part of sworn members of the probation, that's how we're able to look at those deaths. Next, we'll go to Dr. Fishman.
Good evening. Since my name was just invoked, let me just respond and say I'm serving as the second vice president for the Juvenile Justice Commission, and I was personally responsible for that investigation of the youth that died in the facility, along with the other members of the commission. And as you remember, Paul Parker, we had reached out to you and we've talked to members of your team, investigative team, about this in general. I'd like to think Juvenile Justice Commission has done a really good job. We also have less incidents, critical incidents that we're dealing with, and certainly not on level of the adult. Our meetings are public. Yusuf, you're welcome to come and see. We also meet with family members on a regular basis. They also come to our meetings. I think the issues that we do, let me just add this part. What has been described, what's taking place tonight, I've dealt with this with CRB and then also with the Juvenile Justice Commission. And the key is, because of the type of limited power you have and an authority, it really is the part about using things like the connections you have and the ability to have influence on these matters, as well as being open and transparent, that are really critical. With JJC, I think we've done a really good job, actually, for example, of connecting families with members of probation, like the chief, like the chief of probation, as well as also key people within the sheriff's department. That's within our jurisdiction, and I think we've done that. And I think the impacted families that we've worked with have very much appreciated that, those kind of connections and helping to facilitate them. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to Dr. Packard, Darwin, Dr. Fishman's right. We have met a few times with the Juvenile Justice Commission. We've attended some of their meetings, and we do believe that that is one of the reasons that folks know about us more than they have been. So that is perfectly should be acknowledged. Next, we'll go to Dr. Tom Packard.
Yeah, I strongly support Mr. Parker's recommendation on doing more in probation. I read in the LA Times about the, terrible messes they have in LA County probation. I don't read as much about what is happening in San Diego, but I think getting some of this kind of oversight and review can at least validate what's going well in San Diego County probation. And if there are issues, I think CLERB can play an important role in helping identify them and get them worked on at an early stage. So I hope you'll move forward on that.
Thank you. I don't believe we have any other speakers.
Any comments from board members? Yes, sir.
We have jurisdiction over the actions of sworn members, and we can look at the policies and procedures that are in place. Yes. That is correct.
Not the facilities themselves. Can you hang on one second, Dr. Brown?
No,
If you-
we have jurisdiction over every policy and procedure that applies to the facility. We can look at it. We can review the policy to make recommendations, and we have the jurisdiction to look at any actions of sworn members that work in those facilities. We have zero jurisdiction over that. My understanding is yes, and we can defer that to the probation department at the query section coming up. But one of the things, don't forget that we are trying to get as well, that's on hold until we get the Board of Supervisors filled and we do the meet and confer, is to obtain jurisdiction over medical service providers in the county, not just in the sheriff's department, by the way, the probation department as well. And those are civilian employees and maybe contractors.
Mr. Wilson?
I think we can ask that question of the probation of Mr. Miller.
Can you hang on one second? If I want people online to be able to hear you and they can't unless you're at the microphone, would you, I know this is kind of unconventional here, but if you could come up and use the mic, is that council? Are we okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Charles Miller from probation. We do have annual inspections done by the state of California and the Board of Corrections. That I'm not sure. I believe it is an annual inspection, but I'm not 100% sure. I do not work in the institution. That I do not know. I don't know about that. I can.
So Dr. Brown, right now, we do not have the authority to inspect the juvenile facilities. What we're trying to do is get the authority to inspect the part of the facilities that have the adults. Can you, just for clarification, yeah, just one second. Okay. For clarification, who does your inspect? Do you know who inspects?
I believe it's the Board of State Community Corrections.
Okay, great.
through
You had a-
Sacramento.
Did you have a GI and then? Okay, I'm just kidding.
I just, the grand jury inspects every detention facility in the county and juvenile as well as adult.
Correct.
Mr. Wilson?
My question to Mr. Parker is, how many facilities does the nation have?
I know they have two facilities, and you correct me if I'm wrong.
So at this time, as far as I know, the DJJ kids that are coming back to the state are housed at East Mesa, the East Mesa Juvenile Detention Facility.
There is a thought, though, to expand that to YTC, is it not? Is that not? the
That I
case?
don't know because I don't
Okay.
know the
Understood.
expansion plans.
Understood. All right, thank you.
And Mr. Parker, how many juvenile operational?
Yeah, two of them.
It's the Youth Transition Center as well as East Mesa.
Thank you. We didn't want to put you on the spot, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Go ahead, Nadia.
When,
Sorry.
when you say adults, is it like a specific age that you have?
They are, I believe, up to 25 or 26.
Oh.
They're returning back to this county where they were from, where they were sentenced from to go to DJJ. They have different housing units down at East Mesa. So the older kids or older adults, young adults are housed in different modules.
How is the unit available gonna act and engage each other in that same one area that we can all come together?
As far as different folks in, like if you were in, no. When you're assigned to a unit, you stay in that housing unit. There's a common area where everybody in that housing unit goes. There's like, they're called pods down there. So there's your pod, you stay in your pod. You go out to rec with your pod, you do activities and training.
I have a question. Go ahead, Nadia.
So just to clarify, these youth are transitional age youth, correct? Up to age 25?
Correct.
Is this a new program that's been established?
They returned back to this, the county, I believe, the end of June. I'm not sure exactly when they came back, but as soon as they closed Department of Juvenile Justice, that's when everybody was returned. I was transferred from our training manager, I was a training manager, back to internal affairs. So I've been there 3 months. I've been with the department 28 years, but it's all different.
New. Would you
Yeah.
like to invite you to come back and give us a presentation on what you do and your policies and how things work?
I can have Ross Lewin, he's our normal liaison.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. If you could contact Mr. Parker, it'd be terrific because I have a lot more questions as well. And yeah, would you coordinate with him?
Yeah.
But let me ask you one question really fast, and forgive me if I'm naive about this, but why would those that are 25 years old be in your facilities and not the sheriff's department?
They were
Were they originally?
sentenced to juvenile justice.
Okay.
Department of Juvenile
That's what-
Justice, the California
And so
Authority.
they're serving out there. There's, got it.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much for jumping in there. Appreciate that. All right. Mr. Parker, would you come back in either September or October? Do we have somebody online that,
We have one additional request to speak on this topic. and
Okay.
it's Emmanuel Diaz Hayes. I believe this is.
he was the gentleman
I
that we
don't
couldn't
think we
get?
had, I think we had some issues.
Yeah,
Let's try it
okay.
again.
Sure. Emmanuel,
Emmanuel
you're
Diaz
muted.
Hayes. It looks like you're muted. Okay. Unfortunately, we're going to have to move on.
Okay. So Mr. Parker, could you come back September, October with some of the updates that you'd like to present? Policies and recommendations and all that?
That'll be September, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Number C, Mr. Parker? Revision to the CLERB policies
Right.
on
So
seating.
the basic overview, that this board created a board member policy and procedure manual. It only dealt with a couple of issues many years ago. One of those things was how to do the executive officer eval, how to elect board officers, the timing and whatnot. But one of the things it had was just some general decorum, general steps to run a board meeting. And based on some activities, basically the seating of time concept came up, the seating of time to other speakers. And so I know that I've just made some proposed verbiage here, just as a very foundation from Los Altos, California. It's their verbiage that they just addressed this topic. And I just throw it to you folks and tell me if you want to do anything, and I'll turn it over to you, Chair Delaney. That's why we're here.
Mr. Parker, can you read that so the public can hear it as well?
Sure. The limit for speakers will be 1 to 3 minutes, depending upon the number of speakers and the number of items that the CLERB is discussing at that meeting. A single speaker may cede their time to one other speaker. The designated speaker will be given the time which would have been allocated to the other speaker, to a maximum of 3 minutes. The designated speaker will only be permitted to have time ceded to them by one other person. Individuals wanting to delegate time to another must be present at the meeting and must indicate their desire to cede time to a single individual by noting on a speaker card that they're doing so. Persons who have ceded their time will not be permitted to speak on the topic at that meeting. Members of the public are not permitted to cede their time during quasi judicial proceedings.
Thank you. Members of the public, do you have any comments? Okay, board members?
Well, you can see this happen with cars, cars with electric cars. It's not doing good in the actual session, but it's before everything starts.
That's the way it's supposed to be, is my understanding, but that's something that I'll leave up to this board if you want to add that as well, because that's one of the topics that we talked about, these requests to speak forms. Everyone who was here tonight was required to fill out a request to speak. It also says on our agenda that anyone requesting to speak, if they're online, should be filling them out online too. But we don't do that. They simply raise their hand and we call on them without them having filled out anything. So that's something for you folks, if you want to go down that road, and that's up to you.
Go ahead, Mr. Wilson. That's per topic. Per topic.
So if there are two different topics.
Could see the,
Yeah,
right.
the same word.
Correct. Correct. I'm of the opinion, I want the public to be comfortable. I want to hear the public. I want to hear your comments. So if for some reason you are unable to fill out a card, a speaker slip, or online, I'm of the opinion that I think we should just let it go and allow the public to speak. Yes, it does take a little bit more time for us on the board here, but I think the public, it's important that the public speak. And so I would say that we kind of leave that the way it is and just, based on how many speakers, based on how many topics that we have, we can make those decisions at those particular meetings. Mr. Hayes?
Am I correct that generally speaking, it's up to the deference of the chair
It is.
to permit some of this? So,
Correct.
each chair will be different on how they'd like to manage public comment. I'm in agreement with you that
Mhm.
I think people can speak when they want, and if they want to cede to 5 people, so be it. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Wilson?
I agree with Mr. Hayes, that's the second practice of the normal convention, the ultimate authority that.
I do think that we need to, I think two people, maybe, and you had one, but I think maybe two. I think that's standard for a lot of different organizations. would be the standard that we should use. That gives somebody almost 10 minutes to talk. And I think that's plenty. Anything more than that, if you can't say what you want to say in 10 minutes,
What we do in a school district for public comment is we have, we do 4-minute public comments, but then we have a cap of 20 minutes on one topic, unless,
right.
and in this current circumstance, I'm the board chair,
Right.
in which case I've waived the rule
Right.
and extended time or done other things. So, we could also look at something like that if we are interested.
Yeah, the problem is if you've got a topic that's really important to people and you've got 20 people that want to talk, if you have a 20-minute limitation for the total, that doesn't allow everybody to talk. So again, I think that what we should do is, as me being chair, your time can be seated by 2 times 2. Council?
Yes, thank you, Chair Delaney and board members. I did note that in reviewing this section 3, the board meetings in the rules and the rules of order, there is no designation of the chair as having the discretion to lead the meeting. So perhaps it might be a good idea to maybe direct staff to come back and include in proposed language for this along the lines of what you all have discussed here today, and not take any vote on anything and let staff come back next month with some proposed language, taking into account your thoughts tonight.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, because the other thing too is perhaps we aren't really run evidently by a rules of order then either, are we?
Well, under
Roberts.
section 3B of this section that we're looking at right now, it is run by Robert's Rules of
Rules, okay.
Order. But with respect to, public meetings and seating time and the number of speakers, I've learned in my experience that it really is kind of a wait and see approach that needs to be done on a meeting by meeting, item by item. And if there is a circumstance where there are a large group of people and there is a lot of people ceding to others, then those limitations can be placed at the beginning of the specific topic or item. And then all members of the public can understand what the rules of engagement are and respond accordingly.
I agree. So, Mr. Parker, if you could come back with the verbiage based on what we've discussed here tonight?
Sure.
That'd be terrific. Thank you. Do you want to do that for September? Will that give you enough time? Okay. Thank you very much. Did I ask for public? Does the public have, speaking of comments, does the public have any comments that they'd like to make regarding that? Okay, thank you. Unfinished business, Mr. Parker.
The only update or the only item we have for unfinished business is the update on Senate Bill 519. I can tell you that will be going to committee tomorrow. And I believe it's going back, if I read this correctly, it's going back to the Appropriations Committee. We refer to Appropriations Committee, and that's tomorrow at 9 a.m. I have no other update.
And so will they make revisions? You don't know at this point?
I don't know exactly what they're going to do. They may,
Okay.
but I don't know.
Will you update us again in September, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. With that, we're going to go to board member comments. Board member, any comments?
It's good to see GI.
Mr. Parker, can you give us the date of our next meeting so everybody can calendar it?
Sure. Give me 1 minute.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. No, it's actually not going to be the second,
Yeah.
the second
That's what I-
Tuesday. It's on our website.
Okay.
It is going to be the 19th, Tuesday, September 19th.
September
September 19th.
19. Okay, everyone mark your calendars. We need a quorum. All right, and with that, anyone else? Okay, we're now going to go to the sheriffs and probation liaisons. Anyone have anything they'd like to say? Wait, hold on. Good try.
Sabrina, no.
Yeah, that's her sound. No,
I've been quiet too.
actually, I meant the sheriff or probation liaisons, but no?
No, we'll be looking forward to their presentation.
The board has questions.
All right. Appreciate your help. Thank you. Did you want to make a comment? Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, with that, council, could you please read us into closed session?
All right, good evening, Chair and board members. Tonight on closed session, the agenda is as follows: public employee discipline, dismissal and release, discussion and consideration of complaints and reports pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. And you have 9 cases, and that is my read-in.
Great, thank you. And we will adjourn and meet back here in 5 minutes.